Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is a rich narrative that intricately explores themes of love, marriage, social class, and personal growth within the context of early 19th century England. The plot centers around the Bennet family, especially Elizabeth Bennet, the second eldest of 5 daughters, who navigates societal pressures and personal misjudgments to find true love and happiness. The story begins with the exciting news that Mr. Charles Bingley, a wealthy and affable young gentleman, has rented the nearby estate of Netherfield Park. Mrs. Bennet, eager to see her daughters married well, is thrilled by the prospect. The arrival of Mr. Bingley at a local ball sets off a chain of social interactions. Mr. Bingley is immediately smitten with Jane Bennet, the eldest and most beautiful of the Bennet sisters. Jane reciprocates his affection, and it becomes apparent that a mutual attraction is developing. Accompanying Mr. Bingley is his close friend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. While Mr. Darcy is handsome and wealthy, his reserved and seemingly arrogant demeanor initially alienates the local society. At the ball, he refuses to dance with Elizabeth Bennet, dismissing her as tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Elizabeth overhears this remark, and it sows the seeds of her prejudice against him. Despite Darcy's initial coldness, he begins to admire Elizabeth's sharp wit and intelligence. Elizabeth, however, is charmed by the dashing and amiable Mr. George Wickham, who shares a history with Darcy. Wickham's story of Darcy's supposed mistreatment further prejudices Elizabeth against Darcy. The Bennet family dynamic adds to the social comedy and tension. Mr. Bennet is a sarcastic but detached father, while Mrs. Bennet is a frivolous woman obsessed with marrying off her daughters. The family is rounded out by the sensible and mature Jane, the witty and independent Elizabeth, the bookish and reserved Mary, and the flirtatious and imprudent younger sisters, Kitty and Lydia. As Mr. Bingley and Jane grow closer, Darcy, concerned about Jane's family's lack of propriety and social standing, persuades Bingley to distance himself from her. Jane is heartbroken when Bingley abruptly leaves for London, without any explanation. Simultaneously, Mr. Collins, a pompous and obsequious clergyman and the Bennet family's heir, arrives at Longbourn with the intention of marrying one of the Bennet daughters to keep the estate within the family. He proposes to Elizabeth, who rejects him despite her mother's protests. Mr. Collins quickly shifts his affections to Elizabeth's pragmatic friend, Charlotte Lucas, who accepts his proposal for financial security. Elizabeth visits Charlotte at her new home, where she encounters Mr. Darcy again. During her stay, Darcy proposes to Elizabeth, confessing his love but also highlighting the obstacles of her lower social status and family improprieties. Elizabeth, shocked by his condescension and still influenced by her prejudice, rejects him, accusing him of ruining Jane's happiness and mistreating Wickham. Stung by her accusations, Darcy writes Elizabeth a letter explaining his actions. He reveals that Wickham attempted to elope with Darcy's young sister, Georgiana, for her fortune. This revelation forces Elizabeth to reconsider her previous judgments about Darcy. Meanwhile, Lydia Bennet, the youngest and most reckless sister, elopes with Wickham, creating a potential scandal that threatens the Bennet family's reputation. Darcy secretly intervenes, paying Wickham to marry Lydia and thus saving the family's honor. Elizabeth learns of Darcy's involvement through Lydia, who inadvertently discloses the truth. Elizabeth's feelings towards Darcy soften as she recognizes his genuine goodness and the depth of his love for her. When she visits Pemberley, Darcy's magnificent estate, she is impressed by the beauty and elegance of the property, as well as by Darcy's respectful and kind treatment of his servants. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, speaks warmly of Darcy, saying, "He is the best landlord and the best master." This testimony further alters Elizabeth's perception of him. Their relationship reaches a turning point when Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's formidable aunt, attempts to intimidate Elizabeth into refusing any future proposal from Darcy. Elizabeth's refusal to be cowed by Lady Catherine's threats only strengthens Darcy's resolve. Eventually, Darcy proposes to Elizabeth again, this time with humility and a deep understanding of her worth. Elizabeth accepts, having fallen in love with the man behind the pride and prejudices that initially divided them. The novel concludes with the marriages of Elizabeth and Darcy and Jane and Bingley, symbolizing the triumph of love and mutual respect over societal expectations and personal misjudgments. The Bennet family is left to navigate their new circumstances with varying degrees of success, but the happiness of the two couples stands as a testament to the power of personal growth and genuine connection.